The Generals of the Yang Family, Chapter 50.
Today we are opening up a fascinating centuries-old text. We are exploring Chapter 50 of the legendary historical fiction Generals of the Yang Family.
A truly incredible piece of literature.
It really is. And our mission today is to completely unpack what makes this specific slice of literature so wildly compelling. We are going to break down the actual granular mechanics of ancient tag team warfare.
Which is mind-blowing.
Super mind-blowing. We are also going to dive deep into the psychological gymnastics and the PR spin behind imperial surrender. And ultimately, we're going to uncover the deeply surprising, intimate fate of the war's captives.
So, to properly set the stage for the listener, we are dropping right into the climax of a massive, grinding military campaign.
Right in the thick of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Based entirely on the text provided for this analysis, the forces of the Song dynasty have pushed deep into the sovereign territory of their bitter enemy, the Western Xia.
Right.
And the defining feature of this particular battlefield, the thing that really sets this text apart from others, is that it is utterly dominated by fierce, brilliant female warriors on both sides of the conflict.
Which is so cool.
It is. The Song have the matriarchal Yang family women, and the Western Xia have their own formidable princesses and commanders defending their home turf.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because right out of the gate, this text completely defies how I thought ancient battles were supposed to work.
Oh, totally.
I mean, the text leans so heavily into this cold-blooded pragmatism that it honestly feels more like a modern special ops mission. There is no standing on ceremony here.
No, not at all. And before we can even begin to understand the massive political and cultural fallout of this war, which we will certainly get to, we first have to understand the mechanics of how it was actually fought on the ground.
The actual tactics.
Yes. The narrative here deliberately shatters the trope of the isolated duel we were just talking about.
It doesn't just shatter it throws it out the window.
Yeah.
Let's look at the first major engagement the text gives us.
Let's do it.
So we have a fighter from the invading Song side, Yang Jimei, and she is facing off against a Western Xia commander, Princess Jinhua. Now, before the weapons even clash, Jinhua actually tries to offer a way out.
Which is interesting.
Right. She essentially tells Yumei, look, you are deep in our territory. You clearly don't understand the tactical situation you're in. Just retreat now and avoid a massacre.
Which is a fascinating psychological tactic in itself. I mean, Jinhua is asserting her home field advantage here.
Flexing a bit.
Exactly. She is giving the Song forces a chance to acknowledge their overextended position. She knows the Song supply lines are stretched, she knows the terrain better, and she is offering them a chance to leave with their lives, if not their pride.
I would have thought that would be a moment for a dramatic monologue.
Yeah.
But Jimmy is not having it.
Not at all.
She gets furious, calls them thieves, and completely rejects the offer. She charges in with her blade, Jinhua meets her with a spear, and the duel officially begins.
The clash we were waiting for.
Exactly. But here is the critical part, the detail that changes everything. Jinhua starts losing.
Right.
The text makes it clear that after just a few exchanges, her blade work gets sloppy. Her technique becomes, quote, chaotic, unquote. And she realizes she is outmatched in pure one-on-one combat.
Which is a huge admission.
Huge. So she has to break off and retreat. She turns her horse and runs. Naturally, Princess Jinhua, sensing the victory and wanting to secure the kill, charges aggressively after her.
And up to this exact second, this is standard, historically expected battlefield behavior.
Right, running down the fleeing enemy.
Exactly. The retreating enemy is vulnerable, their back is turned, and the pursuing victor wants to eliminate a high-value target. The momentum is entirely on Jinhua's side.
But then the text pivots sharply.
It really does.
As Jinhua is chasing Jimei, totally focused on her target, certainly completely out of nowhere, another Song warrior, Yang Qiji, she just immediately draws her bow and fires an arrow.
Just boom.
Boom. That's it. Princess Jinhua is killed instantly.
It is entirely anticlimactic by the standards of epic poetry, but it is devastatingly effective. The goal is not to prove who is the better individual fighter. The goal is to keep the family unit alive and win the war. I mean, Jinhua made a fatal error. She got tunnel vision.
She forgot about the rest of the battlefield.
Yes, she forgot she wasn't in a sanctioned duel. She was in a chaotic melee.
So the Western Xia side is reeling from Jinhua's sudden death. Their king is panicking. And this warrior named Zhang Rong steps up.
And we should pause to note who Zhang Rong is. The text identifies him as a Kang warrior, known as the Iron Arm General.
which is a terrifying title.
It really is.
Yeah.
And for the listener, the Kang were a distinct ethnic group, largely nomadic or semi-nomadic, living in the western regions. They were renowned for their horsemanship and martial prowess.
So a very serious threat.
Yes, the Western Xia state often incorporated various ethnic groups into their military apparatus, so Zhang Rong represents a different flavor of martial threat. He wields a massive pull blade. It's a heavy, momentum-based weapon designed to crush armor and unhorsed cavalry.
Right, he isn't messing around with elegant fencing, he is a bruiser. So he volunteers to lead a counterattack, and his reasoning is what really caught my eye. He doesn't talk about avenging honor. He points out to the king that while the Song army is massive and dangerous, they are an invading force fighting far from home. He explicitly mentions their stretched supply lines.
Which is the perennial nightmare of any invading ancient army.
Oh, I bet.
Moving thousands of troops requires endless caravans of grain, fodder for the horses, equipment. The deeper you push into enemy territory, the longer and more vulnerable that supply line becomes.
Makes sense.
So Zhang Rong recognizes that the Song are fighting against the clock and the geography. He volunteers to exploit that logistical weakness with a brute force assault before the Song can consolidate their position.
So Zhang Rong rides out, and he faces off against another Song warrior, Princess Danyang. They clash, but very quickly, Zhang Rong pulls a classic fake out.
The feigned retreat.
Yes. He pretends that Danyang is too much for him, turns his horse, and starts riding around the city wall to escape. Danyang, just like Jinhua earlier, takes the bait. She sees a fleeing enemy, her blood is up, and she chases him with everything she has.
We see that same psychological trap again. The chase induces a kind of hyperfocus that blinds a warrior to the broader battlefield geometry.
And Zhang Rong is literally banking on that tunnel vision. He lets her get close, judging the distance perfectly. Suddenly, he spins his horse around and swings this massive pull blade down at her with all his momentum.
A devastating counterattack.
Now, Danyang has incredible reflexes. She actually dodges the blade itself. But the sudden, violent movement causes her horse to lose its footing and completely collapse.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she is thrown hard to the ground. She is dismounted, disoriented, and completely at the mercy of the iron-armed general. He raises his weapon. He is a fraction of a second away from delivering the final lethal strike.
The tension is at its absolute peak. The individual duel has reached its natural, fatal conclusion.
But no, because right at that exact second, yet another Song warrior, Madame Du, hurls a hidden flying knife from a distance. It hits Zhang Rong squarely in the left ribs, dropping him dead from his horse instantly.
Just incredible.
Danyang's life is saved, the Western Xia forces are routed. It's highly coordinated.
They are treating the battlefield as an interconnected system, not a series of isolated events. Right after Zhang Rong is killed by the flying knife, the author inserts a poem. And this poem doesn't celebrate Zhang Rong's bravery, nor does it lament the lack of a fair fight. It literally praises a concept it calls mutual rescue. The Chinese term used in the text is huju. It states that the enemy couldn't even guarantee their own survival for a single moment because of how effectively the Yang family women cover each other's blind spots.
Wow.
The text is telling us, in no uncertain terms, that collective survival completely supersedes individualized glory.
That makes the Yang women so much more terrifying as opponents. You aren't just fighting the person in front of you, you are fighting the geometry of the entire battlefield.
Recycling.
If you focus on the sword in front of you, you die by the arrow from the side. If you focus on the retreat, you die by the flying knife. Their superpower isn't just their individual martial arts, it's their lethal, coordinated synergy. They are constantly scanning, constantly asking, who needs a rescue? Who has an opening?
Exactly. And if we pause to analyze what this tells us about the culture of the Song military as depicted in this text, it reveals a deeply pragmatic mindset. A warrior obsessed with a fair fight would have let Junmei die to preserve the sanctity of the duel.
Right, they'd just watch it happen.
Yes, but the Yang family operates as a single lethal organism. You attack one, you are fighting all of them simultaneously. It prioritizes results and collective family survival over the ego of the individual warrior.
And think about the terrifying math of that battlefield for the enemy. If traditional defense is impossible because the attacks are coming from blind spots you can't even see, how do you fight back?
You don't.
Exactly. The short answer is you don't. And that exact realization is what completely breaks the mind of the Western Xia leadership. Because as the dust settles on Zhang Rong's body, the narrative shifts.
We move off the battlefield.
Yes, we leave the kinetic energy of the battlefield and enter the agonizing, suffocating stillness of the war room. The physical battle is over, but the psychological collapse is just beginning.
We cut to King Mu of the Western Xia. He has just witnessed his brilliant commanders, including Princess Jinhua and his iron-armed general, completely dismantled by these mutual rescue tactics.
He's crushed.
The text tells us he is utterly devastated. He stops eating. He stops sleeping. He is so overwhelmed with despair that he decides he wants to commit suicide.
Which, to a modern reader, feels like an extreme reaction. But in the context of this honor-bound culture, suicide is often framed as the only way to avoid the humiliation of total defeat and capture.
Yes, exactly.
He's looking at the annihilation of his state and his identity.
Yes, the king is trapped in an archaic mindset. He views the conflict as a zero-sum game of honor. He has lost the martial contest, therefore he must forfeit his life.
Right.
But then his left chancellor, a man named Qizixian, steps in. And Qizixian performs a vital function here. He shatters the king's romanticized view of defeat.
Qizixian delivers an argument that is just a masterpiece of cold, hard pragmatism. He basically tells the king, look, the Song Emperor is generous to those who submit, but he completely massacres those who resist to the bitter end.
Laying out the facts.
Just giving it to him straight. He says, the military outcome is already decided. Your army is broken, so why are you acting like a dramatic child throwing your life away?
Right.
Lower the flag, hand over the maps, agree to pay an annual tribute, and guess what? You still get to live in the palace. You still get to be the king.
Qizixian is reframing surrender. He is taking it out of the realm of moral failure and placing it firmly in the realm of a strategic transaction.
A business deal almost.
Exactly. He is offering the king a way to prioritize long-term survival and the retention of local power over a fleeting, destructive sense of honor. It is, conceptually, the exact political equivalent of the mutual rescue tactics we saw on the battlefield. Put your ego aside to ensure the system, in this case, the royal court, survives.
So he applies the Yang women's pragmatism to his own diplomacy. And it works. The king realizes the chancellor is absolutely correct. Ego won't save his life.
Nope.
So he sends a messenger to the Song camp to formally offer his absolute surrender. But the reaction inside the Song camp is just as fascinating and honestly highly relatable to modern politics.
Oh, absolutely.
In the Song camp, you have Madame Zhu, who is essentially the commanding general at this stage, and Yang Zongbao holding a war council. When the enemy messenger arrives offering submission, Zongbao hesitates.
Which makes sense.
Right. He actually debates whether they should accept the surrender or just push forward and conquer the city by force.
Which is an entirely valid military question. I mean, they have the overwhelming upper hand. The enemy is broken. Why stop when total unconditional conquest is within reach?
That's the question. But then a Song official named Deng Wenjin speaks up. And his argument is just phenomenal. He tells the commanders they should eagerly accept the surrender. And I want to get his reasoning exactly right based on the text.
Please do.
He says, first, the Western Xia territory is barren land, a, quote, useless place, unquote, that offers no real agricultural value. Second, he says the people there are stubborn and would be incredibly hostile to direct rule.
He's not mincing words.
Not at all. So his practical advice is that trying to occupy and govern this terrible place would be an endless administrative nightmare.
He is laying out these stark logistical realities of ancient empire building.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Why does the Song side dress this up as virtue when Deng Wenjin literally just said the land is useless and the people are annoying? Because Deng Wenjin says they should accept the surrender in order to, quote, manifest the emperor's virtue of being gentle to people from afar, unquote.
It's incredible.
Sounds exactly like ancient corporate PR.
Because it is. If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is classic imperial statecraft. Neither side in this war is operating purely on morality. Both are governed by strict logistical reality.
Right.
But both sides desperately need a face-saving narrative to legitimize their actions to their own people.
So why exactly is occupying this land such a bad idea for the Song? If they won the war, shouldn't they want the territory? I mean, land is power, isn't it?
Usually, yes. But it comes back to the supply lines we discussed with Zhang Rong. The Song dynasty is an agrarian empire based in the fertile Central Plains. The Western Xia territory is largely arid, frontier land. It cannot support massive farming operations. If the Song army stays, they have to permanently garrison troops there.
Which is expensive.
Massively expensive. Those troops need food, which has to be constantly shipped from the heartland at enormous expense. Furthermore, the local nomadic and semi-nomadic populations do not want to be governed by sedentary bureaucrats.
Hence the stubborn comment.
Right. It would be an endless bleeding wound of insurgencies and supply chain failures.
Ah, so they literally can't afford to keep the prize they just won.
Correct. But an empire cannot simply admit, hey, we are retreating because we can't afford the food transport and the locals are ungovernable. That projects weakness to other neighboring states.
You can't look weak.
Never. So Deng Wenjin provides the solution. Hide their logistical limitations behind the impenetrable guise of Confucian benevolence and mercy. They rebrand a strategic retreat into a magnanimous display of the emperor's boundless virtue.
I think for you, the learner, listening to this dynamic should sound incredibly familiar. You see this exact same mechanic in modern political spin today.
Oh, all the time.
Right. Imagine two massive nations locked in a brutal trade war. After a year, both sides realize their own economies are taking massive damage, and neither side can actually win without bankrupting themselves.
The stalemate.
Exactly. So they quietly agree behind closed doors to just stop escalating. But they don't say that to the public. They both hold massive press conferences and rebrand this mutual exhaustion as a historic diplomatic breakthrough and a triumph of peace and cooperation.
It's the exact same PR strategy.
Deng Wenjin would be a phenomenal modern political operative.
He really would be. The language of virtue is the required lubricant that allows the gears of ruthless pragmatism to turn smoothly in the public eye.
Wow, well put.
And this brings us to the fascinating choreography of the aftermath. Because once the ink is dry on this theoretical, mutually beneficial surrender, the two sides must actually physically interact. They have to inhabit the same space.
Which has to be awkward.
Incredibly awkward. And the text shows us in vivid detail that making peace is not just signing a document. It is a highly choreographed performance of dominance and submission.
Let's look at the formal meeting. The surrender is accepted, the massive gates of the Western Xia capital open, and the Song commanders, led by Yang Zongbao, ride in.
Okay.
And on the surface, the text describes this incredibly polite, almost heartwarming scene. The Western Xia king and his top officials are kneeling by the side of the dirt road, waiting for the conquerors. Zongbao, playing the role of the gracious winner, immediately dismounts his horse.
Showing respect.
Right. He walks over, physically helps the king up from the dirt, and they actually ride side by side into the royal palace. Zongbao even reassures him verbally, saying, "Our emperor is benevolent. As long as you remain loyal, you won't lose your title or your land."
It is a deliberate, highly visible display of magnanimity. Zongbao is signaling to the populace that the era of civil administration stability has begun. By riding side by side, he is visually validating King Mu's continued authority.
But the tension underneath this polite veneer is thick enough to cut with a sword, because they throw a grand banquet to celebrate the peace. But look at the specific details the author includes about this banquet.
The devil is in the details.
It really is. The text explicitly points out that Western Xia high officials are the ones physically serving the food and pouring the wine for the Song generals, and Western Xia women are the ones providing the musical entertainment. It's not a shared meal, it's a service.
Exactly. The roles of host and servant are violently inverted in King Mu's own palace.
And it gets more aggressive. When the banquet is over, look at where they set up their military camps. Zongbao sets up his camp inside the city walls, right in the heart of the capital. Meanwhile, Madame Zhu sets up her massive army camp just outside the city walls.
The spatial dynamics there are an unmistakable threat. Zongbao inside the city is a dagger held to the throat of the royal court. Madame Zhu outside the city is the anvil.
A hammer and anvil.
Yes. If King Mu even thinks about betraying the treaty, he is trapped between the two forces. The politeness is conditional.
Then comes the formal exchange of tribute. King Mu gives Zongbao two exquisite, incredibly valuable rhino horn belts, along with countless pearls and rare treasures.
A fortune.
Truly, Zongbao accepts the belts for himself, a proof of the job, I guess, but conspicuously saves all the other major treasures to send back to the Song Emperor.
Which is smart politics.
Very smart.
Ah.
But then we hit the final, and frankly most jarring detail of the peace settlement. As part of the treaty, they agree to return all the captured Western Xia military generals to King Mu. They take Princess Baiwa as a captive, and they decree that she will be transported back to the Central Plains with the victorious Song army.
This raises an important question about the mechanisms of imperial control. Let's look at the generals.
Okay, the military guys.
Releasing the military commanders is a practical necessity. The Song has already established, through Deng Wenjin, that the local land is stubborn and hard to rule. They need King Mu to govern it on their behalf, collect the taxes, and keep the trade routes open.
Right.
King Mu cannot enforce that order without his military apparatus. he needs his enforcers. If the Song keep the generals, the Western Xia state collapses into anarchy, which doesn't benefit the Song tax collectors at all.
So returning the generals isn't mercy. It's providing King Mu with the tools to do the Song's work.
Precisely.
And as the immense Song army finally packs up its camps and begins the long, arduous march home, the narrative of the text shifts once again.
We're moving again.
Yes, we move away from the messy, violent, pragmatic reality of the frontier, and we enter the polished, highly bureaucratic reality of the imperial capital. The empire now has to physically and culturally digest the massive victory it just won.
We are witnessing the transition from the chaotic creation of history to the formalized recording of history. And the text handles this transition in a remarkably dualistic way. It shows us two entirely different methods of valuing the heroes.
It really does, and the contrast gave me whiplash, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because as the army is marching back, the text suddenly drops this massive epic poem right into the middle of the prose.
Which is a huge stylistic shift.
Totally. And this poem acts as a glorious mythological roll call, celebrating the specific, almost magical powers of the Yang family women. It reads like a superhero team roster.
It really does.
It praises Madame Du for her literal ability to call forth wind and rain on the battlefield. It praises Zhu Lengxiu for her unmatched, lightning-fast spear techniques. It immortalizes Cheng Yangnu for her lethal, unerring flying knife, and Mu Ging for her legendary ability to shoot a single arrow through a willow leaf at 100 paces.
Amazing imagery.
It elevates these women from skilled soldiers to the status of mythic demigods ruling the elements.
It is a mythological consecration of their deeds. I mean, the state needs this poem. The epic verse is designed to cement their legacy in the cultural consciousness of the populace. It is designed to inspire awe, fear, and loyalty among the common people.
But then they actually arrive at the capital city, Yanjing. They are greeted by the Emperor Zhenzong and his top court officials. Yang Zongbao steps forward to report his success to the emperor. Zongbao delivers a hyper-precise, incredibly dry accounting of the conquest. He literally gives the emperor a spreadsheet.
And what are the metrics on that spreadsheet?
He reports that they have conquered exactly 14 prefectures, containing 200 counties, and absorbing 18,000 households. He notes they have secured 400 chits of tax and rent and brought back over 30 carts of raw treasure.
Let's break down those numbers for the listener first, because they are vital. The measurement of ship was a standard unit of volume in ancient China, often used for grain.
Okay.
One ship is roughly equivalent to about 160 pounds. So 400 ship is a massive literal transfer of wealth and sustenance. And the 18,000 households, those aren't just people. Those are taxable units and future military conscripts.
But why combine this high fantasy with a bureaucratic spreadsheet? Why do we need the magic and the math in the same chapter?
Because it perfectly illustrates how the state interacts with its heroes. The empire requires dual narratives to function.
Explain that a bit more.
Well, the epic poem serves the mythic legacy. It gives the citizens a reason to believe their empire is divinely mandated and protected by superhumans. But the emperor cannot feed his army with poems. He cannot pay his bureaucrats with legends of flying knives.
The emperor doesn't care about the wind and rain. He cares about the bottom line.
Exactly. Or rather, he only cares about the magic to the extent that it produces the bottom line. To the imperial court, the heroism and the mutual rescue tactics are entirely meaningless unless they result in measurable state expansion.
Wow.
The state survives on tax revenue, on census numbers, and on land acquisition. The heroes, no matter how beloved, are merely the sharp instruments used to acquire those specific metrics.
That puts the emperor's reaction to the spreadsheet in a whole new, slightly cynical light. I mean, he is thrilled, obviously, because his tax base just expanded. So he immediately starts handing out promotions.
Handing out titles.
Right. Zongbao is elevated to the grand title of Supreme Pillar of State General. Madame Zhu is made the Loyal Deputy General, and the other women are given similarly grand, official-sounding titles. And that brings us to the final, and in many ways, the most fascinating section of this.
The real core of it all.
Because we've moved from the blood-soaked battlefield to the tense diplomatic war room to the glittering imperial court. But now, the text takes us to the most intimate setting of all, the family living room, the private inner sanctum of the Yang family residence.
Right.
And it is here, behind closed doors, that the true final act of this conquest actually takes place.
The transition from the public sphere of the empire to the private sphere of the family home is crucial for understanding the ultimate goal of the Yang family.
So the victorious generals return to the winning mansion. They immediately go to pay their deep respects to the absolute matriarch of the family, Shi Taijun, who's known as the commanding wife,
The boss.
the ultimate boss. And the very first thing she does before they even sit down to eat, before they celebrate the promotions, is deal with the captive, Princess Baihuang. Taijin doesn't throw her in a dungeon. Instead, she immediately arranges for Princess Baihua to be formally married to a member of the Yang family, Yang Wenguang.
And we must emphasize a specific detail the author includes about Yang Wenguang.
Yes. The text specifically, deliberately points out that Wenguang is only 15 years old.
Just a kid.
A 15-year-old kid gets a royal wife. It's wild.
It is well.
And immediately after arranging this marriage, the matriarch orders a grand banquet where all the female warriors formally remove their armor, a specific, highly symbolic ceremony called Jijia. So think of this sequence. They take off their physical armor, signaling the end of the violence.
War, in this context, is merely a temporary, highly destructive tool used to secure the peace and prosperity of the home. However, turning an enemy royal daughter into a Song daughter-in-law is a mechanism of total, irreversible assimilation. If you just occupy the land, the people might eventually rebel.
Because they still have their identity.
Exactly. But if you absorb their bloodline, you erase the distinct future. Princess Baihua's future children, they will be raised in the Wuning Mansion.
As Yangs.
As Yangs. They will be Song generals. They will fight for the emperor.
The war room generals negotiated the surrender of the physical land. But the grandmother, the matriarch, negotiated the surrender of the future.
It is the most permanent victory in the entire chapter. And yet, the text refuses to let us rest comfortably in this newly established peace.
Of course not.
The author offers a very subtle but very clear cliffhanger. Wenguang is married, the armor is off, but the matriarch declares that his official imperial reward from the emperor will be delayed until he conquers the south.
I noticed that. The text ends by saying that for now, quote, the sea raises no waves, unquote, which is a poetic way of implying peace. But they're already talking about sending this newly married 15-year-old south to conquer another region.
It perfectly undercuts the tranquility of the family banquet. The armor is off for tonight, yes, the wine is flowing, but the machine of empire merely pauses. It never truly stops.
It's always hungry.
Always. The system they serve requires constant expansion. There is always another frontier, another stubborn population to pacify, another spreadsheet of households to acquire for the emperor's ledger. The domestic peace is just a brief intermission between campaigns.